Good morning and welcome to another edition of Carpod Church. It's a duller, greyer morning here in Bray, and it's a time for us really maybe to reflect on some of the tougher things in life as we think what it means to be church in a very difficult time, in a difficult stage of our world's history. But it's also a time of personal struggle and sadness. And you can see the black sandal sitting on the dashboard. That sandal is part of this journey as we study the book of Ruth for the coming weeks. And Ruth has a lot to teach us and to show us about how to be church and how to cope with life's difficulties and take advantage of life's opportunities. So we have a story that we began last week of Naomi and Elimelech, who travelled to Moab, even though it was enemy country. They travelled because there was a famine where they were living, and they travelled because they needed to protect their family. They had two boys, Mahlon and Kilion, and these boys were very precious to them. And as hunger and famine began to hit, they moved even to a place of unwelcome because they needed to survive. But their struggles were far from over. Not long after they got to Moab, Elimelech himself actually died. And we're not told why or how, but Naomi and her two boys settled down into life in Moab for a number of years, actually, because nearly 10 years later, both Mahlon and Kilion died as well. Now, in those days, the identity and the protection of a woman was built very firmly around the men in her life, her father, her husband, or her sons. So not only had she the grief of losing beloved family members, she had the grief and the struggle of losing the support and the identity that she would have needed to survive. And she says when she eventually gets back to her people in Bethlehem, she says, "Don't call me Naomi anymore, call me Mara," which is bitter. Naomi is broken by these griefs and these losses. It's a very difficult time for her, and she stays on for a little while longer in Moab. But that's the next part of the story. For today, what I want us to think about is, each one of us have experienced grief and experienced loss. We have really been through difficult times, not just in the last year, but throughout our lives. And those times of grief and loss can be very difficult. One of the things I've learned over the years, as I've walked a journey of loss and grief with many people, is that everybody grieves in their own way and in their own time. And I think it's important that we allow ourselves the space and the time to grieve. If we feel angry, that's okay. If we feel depressed and anxious, that's okay. It's how that person's impact in our life has actually gone so deep into us that it affects all parts of us, physically, emotionally, spiritually. It is more than okay to get angry at God. He's big enough to take it, and it's more than okay not to. It's more than okay to be at peace and maybe even to be able to celebrate from the get-go the life that has been lived in the loved one that you've now lost. So I really, I suppose, want us to reflect this morning as a church on this sense of grief and loss. This sandal on the dashboard is black. It is a symbol, the colour is often associated with death and loss. And we know as Christians that there is hope. We know, maybe even on a head level, that there is life and there is eternal life. But that doesn't stop us feeling real human emotion. There's just huge comfort for me in Jesus' life and in his ministry. But above all, when he came to Lazarus' grave, he knew what he was about to do. He knew he was going to see him in a few minutes. He knew he was going to raise him from the dead. And yet he actually wept. He wept with grief and sorrow. He felt what we feel. He understands what we feel. And as a church and as a people, we need to come to a place of accepting ourselves with our frailties and our vulnerabilities. God doesn't sit there in a big distant throne wondering why we haven't got ourselves sorted out. He's right with us in the mess and the muddle of our daily lives. He's holding us, cherishing us, loving us. And most importantly, and this is the really wonderful thing about our faith and about our church, is actually that He is the bridge between us and those whom we've loved and lost a while. He is the bridge between us and heaven. He is the one who will bring us together again for that great reunion when we do meet our loved ones again. I hope this gives you hope, but even if it doesn't, and even if you're still struggling with grief, that's okay. Just let yourself have a good day or a difficult day, but know that you are not alone. Thank you.